Welcome to this episode of Flowcasts.
How'd you get involved in wrestling?
I grew up on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm the second youngest of 7. There's 6 boys and a girl. So I had 4 older brothers and 1 younger brother, and the brother that was directly ahead of me, Brian, went out for wrestling when he was in the 6th grade. You had to be at least in the 5th grade at the parochial school that I went to be able to participate. Watch as a 4th grader. I'd go up and watch, and every now and then I'd try to sneak out there and get a little wrestling in. But I remember the coaches always pulling me off, telling me I wasn't old enough to wrestle yet. So it was a long year for me to wait to the next year. But I think having watching my older brother participate in his first year of wrestling, and just coming home and working moves, wrestling moves in the living room, sort of really got me hooked. I was hooked from day one. I was always sort of a fighter when I was a kid, anyways. I think I sort of had to be growing up, being the second youngest in that, in a big family. So, to me, wrestling was a natural sport.
And what were your parents like?
My parents were disciplinarians, very supportive, very loving. I come from a very loving household. My dad was a firefighter, and my mom worked at the parochial school that we all went to, and a lot of discipline. And I think that helped me in wrestling because we had discipline in our household. We all had chores that we were expected to do every day, and we all had paper routes when I was growing up to help, bring money in. And so it was. I think it was a family that was that style of living really helped me transfer everything over into wrestling. It was an easy transfer for me.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
There's 7. There's 6 boys and a girl. I have 5 brothers and 1 sister.
Wow, that's a lot.
I'm second youngest. Yeah.
The second youngest?
Yeah. So you got to learn to fight when you're second youngest. I took some beatings from my older brother Brian when I was growing up, and I think that helped me out a lot in wrestling too, because I'd compete against him, and he never held back. And so when I was a young kid, just getting into the sport, I took a few beatings in the practice room.
And what was your mom like?
My mom was she was pretty tough, very loving, but she didn't take any grief from anybody. I mean, she had to be that way because my dad worked a lot of hours. My dad, like I said, was a fireman, and there were times he tried to get as much overtime in as he could. They didn't pay a lot. The firemen didn't make a lot of money back then, and so he had to do overtimes. He had to work holidays, and so my mom basically was raising the family. She raised us with an iron fist, and I'm very appreciative to this day of the way we were raised. Very Christian household. We're all Irish Catholic, and we did a lot of things together as a family. And I think to this day we had a very close family.
So your parents were very into the wrestling aspect?
Yeah, they were very supportive. They were definitely not overbearing by any means. I mean, they never really. They were very supportive. They wanted to make sure that if we needed to go to tournaments or whatever we needed that we had. But my mom and dad really weren't familiar with the sport of wrestling. I mean, it wasn't like my dad was a wrestler. My dad played baseball as a high school kid, and never really was in the sport of wrestling. So we just sort of found it ourselves. And so we were trying to find our way through the sport of wrestling with our friends, with our coaches and stuff. And, my mom and dad didn't know an awful lot about it. Obviously, they learned as they went along, but they were just very supportive. They were the kind of parents that were there. If you had a tough loss, they were there to put their arm around you and tell you, hey, you'll get them next time. And sometimes as a wrestler, you don't want to hear that. But I look back on it, and I see the way some of these parents are nowadays. Wow, my parents were awesome. It was a great. Great thing for me, because as a youngster, sometimes you need somebody there for you if you have a devastating loss. And my mom and dad were both there for me.
Flowcasts.